Shalom and welcome to another in our series of podcasts from Temple Beth a dynamic center for conservative Judaism in Los Angeles. This is a recording of Rabbi Avi Havivi's weekly Siddur class.
So we have been talking for the last, I think, 6 or 7 sessions about various Hasidic ideas about prayer. We had 2 sessions about how to handle distractions during prayer. And now we're going to go, and most of this material, so I want to take a step back. Much of this material is actually from the Baal Shem Tov, early first half of the 1700s, the founder of Hasidism, or at least what disciples or grounded disciples said that the Baal Shem Tov said, since the Baal Shem Tov wrote very little, actually, himself, wrote down very little himself. So this is what is attributed to the Baal Shem Tov by later generation. Now I'm going to screen share, and today we're going to talk about some of his thoughts about what to do before, during, and after prayer. Before meaning prep, during, and after. Okay, that's where we are. Okay, the pillar of prayer from the same thing. Amud HaTfilah, pillar of prayer, section 20. Good. I heard from my teacher, the Baal Shem Tov of blessed memory, that one needs to fortify oneself before prayer. So there is something you're supposed to do before davening, so as to have the presence of mind to pray, at the very least without being distracted, and preferably with conscious adhesion to the divine presence, that important word that we learned at the beginning of our whole Hasidism unit, devekut, okay, that a main purpose of prayer, maybe the main purpose of prayer, is to feel close to God, to get yourself to feel a greater closeness to God. Devekut, from the Hebrew word lidbok, which means to stick to, okay, to cleave to in fancy English. This fortification, meaning what you're doing, what you're supposed to do before prayer, to prepare yourself, so that you'll be minimally distracted and have a greater chance of experiencing devekut. This fortification can be achieved by reciting the Pesukei de Zimra, or by studying Torah and entering prayer in the mental context of Torah study, which enhances mental acuity. In other words, when he is talking about praying, he's not talking about Pesukei de Zimra, the Psalms of Praise, the section from Baruch Shamar to Yishtabach. That's just preparation. So what he's talking about, presumably, are the 2 statutory or required parts of the service, the core statutory parts of the service, that is the Shema with its attendant blessings and the Amidah. Okay, so those are the things for which you have to have, or you're striving to experience devekut and screen out distractions. You prepare yourself for that with Pesukei de Zimra, for example, or Torah study. But there are those who, if they were to be excessive in reciting Psalms or by studying Torah before prayer, would not be able to sustain their power of concentration. This is why it is said in the Talmud, whether one does much or little, what is important is that one intend in one's heart for the sake of heaven. So that and again, Baal Shem Tov's interpretation here, what you do for the sake of heaven means, by the way, it's not necessarily what it means in the Talmud, in the original quote, but here the Baal Shem Tov is taking it to mean what you do for the sake of heaven means for you to have proper kavanah or intention during prayer. Okay, so this goes back to, I think it was Carl's question some weeks ago about Pesukei de Zimra and motoring through. So the Baal Shem Tov should say that we are supposed to do in Pesukei. How are we supposed to use Pesukei de Zimra? What is the purpose of it? It is to get yourself in a proper frame of mind, to have greater devekut and less distractibility, fewer distractions, during the core prayer, Shema and its service, Shema and its blessings, and the Amidah. And thus, this would be my interpretation of what he's saying, you should use the Pesukei de Zimra in whatever way enhances that function. Okay, so if that is mumbling and motoring through, great. If that is just meditating on one psalm or one line, great. Okay, whatever helps prepare you for devekut. What I want to say is halachically, by the way, halachically, what one is required to say of Psukei de Zimra, I'll review this again, is Baruch She'amar. We know that's statutory because it has a Baruch Atah Hashem. Okay, Baruch She'amar. Mizmor L'Todah, the Psalm for Thanksgiving, which is Psalm 100, which is the real short one that we stand for. Ashrei, and you're supposed to mention the splitting of the Red Sea every day. So we do that with Ashir, but in theory, we do that also in Ezrat Avotenu, the last blessing before the Shema. So you don't really have to say, it's recommended that you say Ashir daily, okay? And then Yishtabach, which is the closing blessing, right? So what we have is a blessing envelope. Baruch She'amar and Yishtabach are the envelope. It's the beginning and end. It's just like, forget it. I was going to say it's just like something else, but I'm going to take that back. But you have a beginning and end, which says everything I'm going to say between in this section, God, is Psalms of praise for you. Then we have a whole list of Psalms. What's really required is the Psalm 100, Psalm 145, and opening blessing, Psalm 100, Psalm 145, Az Yashir, in theory, and Yishtabach. Okay? And the rest is, that's what's been arranged for us by tradition, but the purpose of it, says the Baal Shem Tov, is to get you ready for the real deal, and the readiness means so that you can have a better chance of achieving dveikut, cleaving to God, and being free of distraction. Carl, I think the Baal Shem Tov wrote this for you. Paragraph 21 on the second page. Do not overdo the recitation of Psalms before prayer, so as not to tire yourself out to the extent that you would not be able to fulfill the essential daily prayer obligation. The prayer Psalms of Psukei de Zimra, the recitation of the Shema, and the Amidah with proper dveikut. Don't tire yourself out with too much Psalms on account of your energy. Sorry, funny. On account of your energy having been spent before prayer with pious preparations. Sometimes you put so much time, you're having company over, you put so much time into preparing the meal, you're like exhausted by the time you get to the guests and the meal. This is a problem for people who host a Seder, right? You got to put on your game. After all those preparations for the Seder, then you got to somehow, keep your game face on for actually hosting the Seder, which is hard because you put in hours and hours and hours of prep. So the Baal Shem Tov is saying, don't blow it all your energy on Psalms, okay? Because you got to have enough for the main event. Rather, began the actual prayer with dveikut. And if at the end of the formal prayer, God grants you additional strength, you're really tuned in after the Amidah, then recite additional Psalms or the Song of Songs, Shir HaShirim, which is believed by Rabbinic Judaism to be an allegory, right, about the love of God and Israel. Then do extra stuff with dveikut. You're in a dveikut mood? Great. Keep on going after you fulfilled your obligation. But don't blow all your energy on the prep. So too, on Yom Kippur, before the final Ne'ilah prayer, pace yourself by reciting the Machzor without such great concentration, so that afterwards you can pray with great devotional concentration, dveikut, meaning you really want to have dveikut for Ne'ilah. You don't want to be exhausted by that, okay? So don't blow it all on earlier prayers and have nothing left for the ninth inning. Okay, I'm going to pause here. I think this is all I wanted to do about prep. Okay, Michael.
Well, now I think I understand what I see, and all of the rules published start the Shacharit.
Yes.
The start time for who have done the Shacharit.
Yeah.
Nobody leads. There's 15 minutes. Everybody's on.
Correct.
And now I understand. Not
Correct.
everybody doing the
Correct.
same.
Correct. And I have seen non-Haredi shuls in America, ones that are more. I don't like to use the word experimental or creative because that puts it in a particular box, but experimental or creative, less rigid, where they'll say Psukei de Zimra is the Chazan says Baruch She'amar. The Chazan will say Yishtabach to signal the end, okay? And you pace yourself through Baruch She'amar, you pace yourself the way you want to pace yourself through Psukei de Zimra.
Well, in this case, they don't even have.
They don't even have that. I understand. Understood. Yeah. Got it. By the way, in some Sephardi and Italian, I have an Italian Siddur that I use at home sometimes because I really like it. But some Sephardi Siddurim, a lot of the parts that we consider to be part of Psukei de Zimra, a bunch of the Psalms are actually said before Baruch Shamar, meaning this whole question of what are we supposed to say for official Psukei de Zimra is historically less rigidly codified than, let's say, the Shema and its blessings and the Amidah, which is more rigidly codified, right? There's fluidity. Once things get printed in a Siddur, we think, subjectively, there's no fluidity. I have to say all of these words, okay? And we daven with the Chazan leading as if everyone is supposed to say all of these words, and people then have the experience. I know there are people in Shul have the experience of, like, they try to start, when I say people, I mean the Jews in the pews and Morning Minyan, they sort of try to start each psalm with the Chazan, because the Chazan ending and then starting a new psalm signals, oh, I'm supposed to be up to there. They only get through a few lines, and then the Chazan does the ending and the beginning, and then they'll jump to the next psalm. And, if that works for you, that's fine. The Baal Shem Tov would say, whatever works for you, as long as it works for you, okay? Okay. I'm not sure exactly why I brought this next passage, compiled this study sheet a couple of months ago. This possibly was written by the Baal Shem Tov. It's from his Tzava'ah, which means his spiritual will and testament. Prayer is union with the divine present. That doesn't surprise us, right? Devekut. By the way, the word, this will be a key to how he goes on. That root davak, anyone want to flag me down and say where that root first appears in the Bible? Who is davak? Who cleaves in the Bible? I'll give you a hint. It's in the first parsha. Anyone can unmute and answer. That is why a man leaves his mother and father, v'davak b'ishto, and cleaves to his wife, v'hayu levasar echad, and they become one flesh. It is actually Genesis, the Torah's explanation for sexual desire, okay? The desire for humans to literally cleave to each other, okay? So this devekut is a word that is heavy with connotation, all right? Just as two people will, back to the Baal Shem Tov, just as two people will move their bodies back and forth as they begin the act of love, so must a person accompany the beginning of prayer with the rhythmic swaying of the body. Wow, man. Shuckling is like, I'm sorry, I don't know if I'm, after reading this will enhance your prayer experience or ruin your prayer experience, okay? In this passage, he seems to be saying shuckling is like sex. There is movement, but when one reaches the heights of union with the presence, the kavod, presume that word is Yiddish, the movement of the body ceases. Wow, pretty heavy. By the way, I don't know a huge amount about this, so it's like I, read a book, heard a person speak about a book about that says something about, 3 steps removed. Apparently, early on, when there was a lot of opposition to the Hasidim, because the Hasidim were seen as rebellious to the Jewish community, not rebellious, that's the wrong word, deviant, better word. There arose, as Michael says, a group that was opposed to the Hasidim, more traditionalists. They were called the Mitnagdim, which just meant the opponents, okay? Just like, GOP, Republican Party, GOP stands for General Opposition Party, right? So they were just called the opponents, in Yiddish, the Misnagdim. And if you practice this way, you are, the adjective would be Misnagdisha, Hasidisha or Misnagdisha. So one of the claims that was leveled against Hasidim is that, I'm sorry, I hope there are no children. I should have announced that it was PG-13, this class, that they ejaculated during prayer, that their shuckling was to cause sexual stimulation, and that they ejaculated during prayer. It was a claim that was leveled against them, okay, which I believe was not true, okay? But look at what the Baal Shem Tov says. By the way, this takes us back to, Shir HaShirim, Song of Songs, interpretation that it's all an allegory between God and Israel. But here, the Baal Shem Tov and Hasidut is taking it, I think, a step further, because allegory of love between God and Israel, that means Israel like as a big group, okay? Here the Baal Shem Tov is saying, no, it is your individual cleaving with the Shekhinah. It's a metaphor, okay? And I can't remember if we talked about Shir HaShirim in this class. Commentators about why the Song of Songs is classically interpreted by Rabbinic Judaism to be a metaphor about the love of Israel and God, God being the groom, is that the author of Song of Songs in this theory wanted to use the most intense type of the most available metaphor. The most available metaphor was the most intense type of human love, okay? And according to this theory, the most intense type of human love was the peak of romantic and sexual love. And that's why Shir HaShirim uses that image as a metaphor for God's love, Israel's love for God. Okay, enough on that. Got to cool down. Okay, Michael.
Yes, I was going to say that not only the textual alluring,
yes,
but they developed a trope that was the most sensual sounding of any.
In Shir HaShirim? Is that what you think?
Yeah.
Okay. Michael is saying the music, by which you really mean, of course, the one we're familiar with, by which you mean Ashkenazi,
yes.
Right? Right. So Michael is saying, I'm going to misquote you now. He is saying that he finds the melody of Shir HaShirim inherently erotic. Okay. Back to earth, down to earth. Okay. Next page. There are times when a person's body may remain completely still while the soul serves God in silent prayer. Okay. Sometimes you're completely still. In such moment, your prayer may be filled with a burning and awesome love, though one who sees you might never guess the depth of your inner service. Okay. Only those who are already at one with God may attain this prayer of inner flame and outer stillness. Such worship has greater power than devotion, which can be seen by others. So it's a little different than when he said in the other passage. The other passage he said, the shuckling is the arousal, then the climax is when you're completely still. And here he's saying, no, there are times when you're completely still, and yet you're totally in devekut. Or it always is weird for me to say devekut. Devekus, okay. Such worship has greater power than devotion, which can be seen by ours. The shells of evil which feed upon wayward prayers cannot reach the silent prayer, for it is deeply hidden within the self. And we talked at some length the last few weeks about the shells, the klipot, or the husks that cover up the sparks of light and how you got to get rid of them. Here, your prayer is so intense that the shells can't touch it. Okay, moving on. More ideas about preparation for prayer. This is very relevant for all of us. Take special care to guard your tongue before the morning prayer. Even greeting your fellow, we are told, can be harmful at that hour. A person who wakes up in the morning is like a new creation. Begin your day with unkind words or even trivial matters. Even though you may later turn to prayer, you have not been true to your creation. All of your words each day are related to one another. All of them are rooted in the first words speak. I will speak personally. I am always mindful of this. Baruch Hashem. I've been married to the same woman for, I don't know, I think more than 35 years and more than 35 years, less than 40 years. I've lost count. Okay. And there are times when we have a moment of friction. And if we have a moment of friction, like actual argument, bad feelings, as sometimes happens to people who are partners for a long time, and I haven't resolved it before davening, I have trouble davening. Okay. The Baal Shem Tov is saying, you engage in gossip at shul before you daven, it's going to mess up your davening. You read the news on your phone before you daven, it may mess up your davening. Okay. Take care that what your words before prayer are such that they do not derail your attempt to achieve dveikut, cleaving to God, and full concentration, which is what you're supposed to do in prayer. Okay, so just something to think about there. That's part of the before. Where we did some before, we did some during, now after. Again, I called this session before, during, after. This is my last page. This is the after. Take special care of what you do in the moments immediately after prayer. What do many of us do immediately after prayer? I'll tell you what I do. I look at my cell phone. Did any vitally important messages come in during davening? Any vital news updates that I missed in the last 35 minutes? Okay? But the Baal Shem Tov said, I don't know. Don't do that. It's the Degel Machaneh Ephraim. Take special care of what you do in the moments immediately after prayer. The spirit of your worship may remain with you and affect your thoughts and deeds, right? Sometimes you might achieve what we might call in modern parlance, a good spiritual vibe with your davening, okay? So don't let it all evaporate immediately, says the Degel. The spirit of your worship may remain with you and affect your thoughts and deeds. One who prayed with great fear of heaven, fear meaning reverence or fear, it is about yira, reverence, which corresponds to din, right? Chesed and gevura, back to the sfirot, may see awe turn to anger. If what you're mulling about is the strictness or severity, all right, you're in that mode, then you turn back to your human things, that can turn to anger. One whose prayer was an outpouring of love, if it's all chesed, may be overwhelmed by unwanted passion. Too much chesed. One of the midrashim, classical midrashim in the rabbinic era says, I've said this before in this class, that the sin of Noah's generation was too much chesed, too much love. It was actually indiscriminate sexuality, right? Too much love. So you can be overwhelmed, too much severity or too much love. In order to avoid such pitfalls, it is best after prayer to begin at once your work or study. Look at this. By the way, sometimes they say this in mystical tradition. These words require careful thought, but their implications are best not committed to writing. I don't exactly know what maybe I can, okay. I have stopped the screen sharing. I'll pause. We have a few minutes for question comments. So again, this is according to the Baal Shem Tov and his disciples, preparation. So I'm going to summarize preparation for prayer, which is both negative and positive. The negative is avoid stuff that's going to get in the way of you getting in a prayerful state of mind, and do stuff, psuke de zimra, that helps you be in a prayerful state of mind, but don't overdo it in a way that is going to mess it up for you. Okay? Prayer, I'm sorry. There's a saying, an Aramaic saying that people talk about, that is used when you're studying Torah, which is ilule de mistafina, which means if I were not afraid, if it weren't written, I'd be afraid to say it. Okay? So ilule de mistafina, prayer is like sex. It's what one passage from the Baal Shem Tov says. Okay? There's an arousal and there's a climax, right? There is a sequence to it, right? Which means that the psuke de zimra is foreplay, okay? Supposed to get you in the right mood. Can't be too short, can't be too long. Too short, too long, not right. You messed it up. You harshed the buzz, as they say nowadays. You spoiled the mood, okay? I'm not in the mood anymore, all right? That's the metaphor. And then you're in a prayerful spirit. You've achieved some dveikut, some cleaving. Think carefully, and again, we didn't get into specifics about this. I'm not sure exactly what the implications are. Think carefully about how you ramp down and how you come back to regular life, how you land the plane. Okay, I'm going to pause. Question, comment, thought.
Yeah, so I'm surprised, I guess, that there wasn't a little more about afterward.
Yeah.
And what do we do in our practice? We sing a song.
Yeah.
We make kiddush, but that's because there's food time.
Yeah.
But are there any other guides from this tradition as to how to wind down from prayer?
Yeah, I don't know. in theory, yes, somewhere, because I have not plumbed the vast depths of Hasidic literature. So probably there's more on this. I think they would say, by the way, you're saying Kiddush, what you mean by that is on Shabbos, not necessarily on regular daily minyan. I think he would say, just don't, they didn't say this. This is what I'm saying, and maybe I'm saying the opposite. Don't lose it. Don't lose what you've achieved by, I guess I'll just say on the one hand, on the other hand. Don't lose what you've achieved by being in the right spiritual vibe. Don't lose it by, I don't know, going immediately to read the news or gossip. What else do we do in shul? We gossip. And on the other hand, what the Degel was saying is, somehow what you achieved in prayer can lead to you, he might say, getting carried away or on a single kind of track after prayer, and that's a mistake too. I don't know. If you have little kids and you have to, I don't have little kids at home now, so I have some vague memory of this. You have little kids and you have to deal with them immediately and they're sticky, because little kids are sticky, and you feel like, I'm in this spiritual plane, I'm elevated. Don't bother me. Don't interrupt my spiritual high. I think they would say, that's a mistake too, because you haven't thought about how to ramp down into regular life. So I don't think I know the answer, Carl, and I think we just have to sort of speculate it. It's sort of like, don't lose it, but don't abuse it. Don't lose whatever you achieved, but don't have it linger at such a level that you're then not able to re-enter regular life properly. I don't think they say that. I think that's just my interpretation. Other thoughts? I don't know if anyone is shocked by the thought that shuckling is like sex, and then the pinnacle of the experience is when you're completely still, and that's in your davening, some point in your davening. But I just want that's what Hasidism wants you to think about. So I'm going to leave it. There's a hand in the back there.
Maybe I want to aspire.
Yeah, you could say that. Correct. Obviously, the metaphor works both ways, right? And there's lots of stuff in the halacha, in medieval halacha particularly. I mean, a little bit in the Gemara, expanded on in medieval law codes about how to have sex be holy. Don't have sex when you're drunk. Don't have sex when you're angry. Don't have sex fantasizing about another person. It's all advice for men, because the halacha is written by men for men, right? About men. Speak nicely to your wife in advance. All sorts of things. Yes. So the metaphor in the Jewish tradition does work both ways, depending on what sources you're reading. Okay, let's ring off for now. Cool down. Got to cool down and rejoin regular life. And we'll continue next week with some other, I hope, because I haven't found it yet, with some other Hasidic material. So hopefully I think we'll do Hasidism the next 2 weeks up until Pesach. Everyone, have a good day. Stay healthy. Be Torah.
You have been listening to another in our series of podcasts from Temple Beth Am, a dynamic center for conservative Judaism in Los Angeles. If you enjoy these podcasts, we invite you to write a review on the Apple Podcast site or wherever you get your podcasts. For more information about Temple Beth Am Los Angeles, go to tbala.org.